Good morning, everybody. I was going to say we're politically speaking today, but we're not politically speaking today. That was last week. I'm Ben Dryden, and you're watching DrydenWire Live today, Thursday, October 28th, 2021. Today I'm chatting with Adam Jarchow, who recently filed paperwork to run for Wisconsin Attorney General. Adam previously served in the state assembly representing the 28th Assembly District, which includes parts of, Burnett, Polk, and St. Croix counties. Adam, an attorney, currently serves clients in a private law firm located in Clear Lake, Wisconsin, and along with former Senator Patty Shockner, joins me every third Thursday of the month for our live Politically Speaking with Adam and Patty show. Adam, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Ben. I'm doing awesome. How are you?
You know what? I'm really doing well. What's usually like now, this time of the week, it's Thursday, I'm kind of dragging on. I'm actually, it's raining, it's over, but I'm in a super positive mood, and I just feel great. And you know what? It's probably because you're on, now I think about it.
Yeah, it probably is. That makes a lot of sense, that you're hanging out with me, so it's going to be a good day. That's how I feel about you. It's going to be a good day. I'm with Ben. It's going to be awesome.
I love it. See, it's not even Positive Tuesday, but I love it. We need to come up one for Thursday. So obviously, we have a lot to chat about. So we had our Politically Speaking show with you and Patty last Thursday, and it was a couple hours after that. Someone had sent me a link to an article saying that you were running for Attorney General, and asked if I knew about it. I'm like, I don't know anything about this, at all. So I remember, I was texting you a little bit. So I'm like, you know what? Don't tell me anything. Let's have you come on. Then it was a week from that day, so today, and talk about it. So I'm going to learn all the things that you want to say and all your intentions and everything what this is all about at the same time everybody else does. But before we kind of get into that, I do want to ask you about Ryan Owens.
Sure.
Ryan Owens was, I'm sorry, let me back up. Right now, I believe it's in the Democrat side, of course, our current Attorney General, Josh Call. And then the Republican side, it was an Eric Toney. I think he's a DA in, where is that?
Fond du Lac.
Fond du Lac, the Republican. And then Ryan Owens announced as a Republican, and he came on the show about a month and a half ago and seemed like a stellar young man. And I say young because, I'm almost 45, so anyone younger than I am is a young man. But he seemed incredibly capable and knowledgeable, intelligent. I thought he did really, really well. I think he even said on the show that he had raised somewhere around $300,000 over a course. I don't know what the period was or the quarter was, which I think was a record, he had said. And then a week and a half later, he drops out. And I don't think we ever brought that up during our Politically Speaking shows. So first, I want to ask you about Ryan Owens. Did you like him as a candidate? And when he did announce that he was dropping out, which is very early in the race, were you surprised by that?
Yeah, I did like him, and I was surprised when he dropped out. Politics, as you and I have discussed, is a rough and tumble game. There's an old saying, politics ain't beanbag, right? And so he started getting beat up for this or that, and I think his family really took it tough, and they took it to heart. Ryan was open during his campaign about having an autistic son, and he said that he got home from the campaign trail one day and his son was bawling his eyes out, and he just couldn't take it and didn't want to continue to put his family through it. And as somebody that has been through a rough and tumble few campaigns, nothing like a statewide office, obviously, but state senate and a couple of state assembly campaigns. It is rough, and it is always tougher on the family than it is on the candidate. I'm used to people, even today, 3 or 4 years after I've been out of office, people still say the most cringeworthy things about me. And, I don't care. I've heard it all at this point, and it really doesn't matter what you say. But it bugs my wife still. And I always ask her, what do you care? I mean, you don't even know that person. They live in, Waukesha. Who cares what they say about me? And she, it bugs her, and I'm sure it bugged Ryan's family. And as a good dad, Ryan didn't like that. So, I was surprised that he got out. I was disappointed to see that. I thought he was running a good campaign and was giving a good challenge to the other candidate.
So I want to get into the other candidate because, again, I don't know that much about him. But speaking of that, there are I don't know why anyone goes into politics in terms of running for assembly or I don't know what the AG gets paid, but in terms of just like the assembly or a senator, you're making around $50,000 a year. I get it. That's a very good paying job, but it isn't a ton. And every 2 years or 4 years, if you're in the Senate, you got to run again. There's no job security, and all of that stuff you could probably get past, but it's the family part of it. I don't know, man, you got to put your family through a lot of things. So it sounds like you may be doing that again for your wife. So I'm very sorry for you, Barb. So you filed so I don't want to say that you have announced that you're running, because I have not seen a press release. You have not sent anything. So I didn't want to say that even in our preview for this show this morning that you are running for, because I still don't know. I mean, you kind of are, I think, maybe. So I worded carefully. You have filed the necessary paperwork to run for Attorney General. So that story was on Thursday of last week. When did you file the paperwork?
It must have been on Thursday, I think. I'd have to look back. Wednesday or Thursday of last week, I filed the paperwork.
Okay. And when did you so you filed it a week ago today on a Thursday. When did you decide that you were going to do this, and why?
It's something that I had been thinking about, because after Ryan dropped out, I was looking for an alternative candidate and had lots of discussions over a couple of week period with a number of potential folks who might be interested in running. And when I say a potential candidate, I'm looking for somebody that I think can run a huge agency. The Department of Justice has like 750 employees. They'd be conservative or pro-libertarian. They would fight for our rights against federal overreach, and would have a broad array of kind of legal experience. And that's something that certainly Ryan brought to the table. And as the couple weeks drug on, the people that I was talking to, sort of one by one, dropped out from consideration.
Sure.
And, I'm not willing to allow this primary process to happen without the other candidate, Eric Toney, having a challenge. I think he's a terrible candidate. I think he is somebody that we absolutely should not have as AG. And so I want to make sure that there is a choice for Republican primary voters next August. And frankly, I feel like there are really good people in this state. We have some really good conservative or liberty-leaning lawyers in this state, and I was really hoping somebody would run. But when nobody got in, I thought, I'll jump in, and hopefully what that will do is two things. One, I want to talk about Eric Toney's record, because I think it's an awful record for conservatives to know about. And two, I want to put it out there that this is a wide open race. And if you are a conservative lawyer that's ever thought about running for this, now would be the time. Jump in. Eric Toney's beatable in the primary. Josh Call is really beatable in the general election. And so it kind of has worked. We've had really good statewide media with the Journal Sentinel and the Cap Times, where I've had a chance to talk about my concerns about Eric Toney, and as well to talk about how this really isn't about Adam. I don't need to be Attorney General. As you say, I'm very blessed. I have a great life, great small businesses with my wife, great little law practice. We live out in the rural area where I wanted to live my whole life. And so jumping back into the deep end of the pool is not exactly on the top of my list. That said, I love my kids. I love my neighbors' kids. And I am terrified with the direction we're heading in this country. And if nobody else will step up, then I will. But I really would prefer that it be somebody else. So where that stands today is I've had really good conversations with an individual that I think may jump into this race as soon as today or tomorrow. And if his name is Jake Curtis. He's been sort of considering it and kicking it around and having all the right conversations.
Well, now he has to. You just said his name, so now he has to.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if Jake does jump in, then I will wholeheartedly endorse him, and I will then have had the shortest candidacy in the history of Wisconsin for Attorney General.
Jake Curtis, just obviously he hasn't announced or anything. You just said, but quickly, can you just what does he do?
He's a private practice lawyer, lives and works in a suburb outside of Milwaukee.
Okay.
I got to know him because he worked for a state senator in the state senator's office.
Yeah.
He has been served on a county board. He's been a private practice lawyer. I think he worked for a short time in the district attorney's office. He was chief counsel to DNR under Governor Walker. He worked at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty.
Oh, sure.
So for me, Jake checks all of the boxes that I'm looking for in a candidate for attorney general. And if he jumps in, I'm going to be thrilled to support him.
So let me understand this. So you filed the necessary paperwork to run for attorney general because Ryan Owens dropped out of the race. We'll get to Eric Toney here and your views on Eric Toney, but clearly it sounds like you don't think that he would be a good attorney general for whatever reason. We'll get to that. So you decided, I will put my name in. I will file the paperwork. But it's not that you want to actually be on the ballot, right? This is more about, help me understand that part. It's more about, like if you filed the paperwork, how is that going to get other people going, oh, okay, well, if Adam's doing it, then I guess I will too. How does that benefit what you're kind of, I don't know what I want to call it a goal, but the idea behind this is if I do this, that means other qualified candidates in the Republican Party will announce.
Well, because what was happening is nobody was talking about the race. It was kind of a dead issue, right? We're all focused on Becky Clayfish and Tony Evers and Joe Biden and the Virginia gubernatorial race. Nobody's talking about this race. So I wanted us to get back to talking about this race. And there's no better way to do that with a lot of the people in the state than to start getting newspaper articles published in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and the Cap Times, because what happens is a bunch of the local papers, then pick those stories up. And so now we've got this race is sort of front and center again. And if I'm saying in those interviews, which I did say, is I want another candidate to jump into this race. I want another conservative to jump in. My goal was to get people talking, and we did. And I'm hoping that will now result in another good candidate jumping into the race. So, it's certainly an odd way to go about doing things, and I gave a lot of thought to what the right way was to get some attention on this race, and I ultimately landed on, well, if I file, then the newspapers are going to pick it up, and that will give me an opportunity.
Right.
That will give me an opportunity to talk to these reporters about my views of not only Eric Toney, but what kind of individual would make a good candidate.
Sure. So before we get to Eric Toney, because that needs to be the discussion next, right? Because that seemed to be, this is the motivation behind every decision that you've made up until this point regarding this. But I have to ask, so in the event that Jake Curtis doesn't announce, or he does and then he kind of, for whatever reason, maybe he drops out, or you don't find someone that doesn't step up and run for attorney general in the Republican on the Republican side that you believe is that's the guy, or girl, but you know what I mean, the guy. Do you stay in?
Yeah, so what I've told people is I think we've got some time here, right? We're heading into the Thanksgiving and deer hunting season. One focuses on that. And then right on the heels of that, we're into the Christmas season. And so I don't think people are going to spend a lot of time focusing on politics over the next couple of months. So my goal would be, if Jake doesn't get in, to continue having conversations with other folks over the next couple of weeks. And then during deer hunting season, when I'm out sitting in my deer stand, if I have not found anyone or nobody else has gotten in, I will have to actually give this serious consideration about, do I really want to, put my family through a statewide campaign? Do I really want to put our small businesses through that, my law practice through that? And then sometime after deer hunting, kind of between deer hunting and Christmas, I'll make a decision. And, but I would certainly say that if nobody else gets in, I would lean towards doing it, because I just, we're going to talk about Eric Toney and my concerns about him and his candidacy. And I just feel so strongly about it that I'm just not willing, I don't think, to just kind of let him be coronated as a Republican, as our nominee in August when we have that primary.
Yeah. Barb, maybe if Sean Duffy doesn't run for governor, he will go for attorney general. Yeah, as far as I know, he's not running for either of those.
Right.
I don't know if you've heard anything about that, but I don't think so, right?
Yeah, I was surprised to hear. I was surprised to hear what President Trump said,
Yeah,
a week or two ago about Sean, because I think Sean and his wife are reasonably happy doing what they're doing on
yeah.
TV, and
Mm.
I think they've even bought a home in New
I
Jersey.
think
So
so. Yeah,
I I I would be surprised to see Sean run for either office.
yeah. So before I move on here, just to be clear, you're not accepting any donations right now. You're not campaigning this, so none of that stuff right now. We'll wait and kind of see. Hopefully, other people, including this Jake Curtis, boy, they come in great. I back out. Shortest campaign ever,
Right.
and we move on, and we just put all of our support into that individual, or you would then just support that individual, correct?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Got it. So what you've been talking to media, and what are the questions that you're getting from them? And then let's get into Eric Toney and why this is all kind of coming to be. But what are the biggest questions that you're getting from media in Milwaukee, in Madison?
Yeah, so a couple of things that they always ask about. So there's this kind of misconception among many voters, I think, about what the attorney general does. And it's really the fault of politicians who over the years have done what I call sloganeering. And so they find consultants who will poll test things and say, well, what really works as a message? Well, what works, especially on the Republican side, is we call this attorney general the top cop, right? That's the word that we use for attorney general.
Yeah, that's dumb.
Well, first of all, it's he or she is not a cop.
Right. Okay, I don't understand.
and really isn't actually even a prosecutor, for the most part. The attorney general has prosecuted literally one case that I know of in the last 20 years. The attorney general's office has original jurisdiction to prosecute only sort of like three kinds of crimes: tax, securities, and what I would call organized crime, the Crime Control Act. But otherwise, the district attorneys, our county district attorneys work with our local sheriffs and our local police officers, and they're the ones that do the prosecuting. The attorney general's office has a support role to play for sure with the crime lab. They have some special prosecutors that they'll send out for cases, and then they have some of that original jurisdiction. But the vast majority of what the attorney general does is not prosecuting, right? Did you see Brad Schimmel going to court? No. Do you see Josh Call going to court? No. They're essentially, despite the branding, the unfortunate branding of top cop, they're essentially the CEO of the Department of Justice. And so I've got a lot of questions from reporters about, well, Adam, you're not a prosecutor. How could you do this job? I'm like, well, I could do the job well because I'm not a prosecutor.
Right.
And so I have a broad range of experience in the legislature, as a businessman, as a private practice attorney. I think I could run an agency reasonably well given that breadth of experience. And it's not to say that a prosecutor couldn't run it well. I just think that I have more relevant experience actually to running an agency. And so we've spent a lot of time talking about those kinds of issues and the kinds of things that I would be interested in. And, people don't really realize this, but what attorneys general do a lot is sort of sue the federal government. So, I mean, the federal government says, okay, you have to have a vaccine mandate in Wisconsin. As attorney general, I would sue, like others Republican attorney generals have, the Biden administration for that. Other attorneys general across the state have sued the Biden administration for failing to protect the border. I would certainly join those efforts or lead those efforts. So there's a variety of those kind of things. You remember the Obamacare cases, a lot of those were brought by attorneys general. Yep. And so those are the kind of things that the attorney general can do. And then at the state level, the attorney general can protect people from an overreaching bureaucracy. The attorney general can work through. We've had, lots of concerns about election security and those sort of issues following the 2020 election. The attorney general can work on those kinds of concerns. And then if you sort of tick through the list of the things that the attorney general is responsible for, including consumer protection and other areas of the law, well, those aren't particularly relevant to, being a prosecutor.
Right.
And one of the things that the attorney general has the authority to do that I think is really cool is to write what's called an attorney general opinion. And that opinion is not binding on the courts, but it is binding on the bureaucracy. So as you know, when you're looking at the laws, there's always kind of a ambiguity here or there. And the attorney general can shed light on that ambiguity. And by doing that, the attorney general can sort of drive how that law is interpreted by the bureaucracy, by the Department of Natural Resources, for example. And for me, the DNR is a huge issue, as you know.
Yeah.
And so having the ability to steer some of the legal interpretation for that agency would be something that the Attorney General ought to be working on.
Right now, we have an attorney general that is a Democrat, and we have a governor that's a Democrat. And before that, we had Brad Schimmel. I don't know. I'm sure. Well, actually, of course, you know who he was. Plus, you were down in the legislature when he was still there. But and
Right.
we had a Wisconsin governor at the time. Now, these aren't like tied together. But so in Wisconsin, so I really haven't been following this since I think started like 6-7 years ago. Well, about when I started DrydenWire. But before that, I really didn't pay attention to it that much. Do you recall a time where we've had a Republican attorney general and a Democrat governor, or vice versa? Is
Yeah.
that
JB
common?
Hall. Yeah, JB Holland from our area was AG with Doyle.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So how does that, is that good? Do you think it's one of those things? I know you've talked about it. You and Patty have talked about it on our Politically Speaking show, where a Republican governor, Republican-held Senate, and Republican-held Assembly isn't always a good thing. Or Democrat, Democrat, Democrat. We kind of need that a little bit. Is that good, or is it, it really doesn't matter? Attorney General, you got your own job to do. It has nothing to do with who is in the governor's mansion.
The thing that I've often talked about on our show and with you is the beauty of our system is the checks and balances from top to bottom. So one of the things that I like about an elected attorney general is they are not beholden to the governor, right? So the attorney general, Merrick Garland, was appointed by Joe Biden, the federal attorney general. So, right, he's kind of beholden to Joe Biden, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, kind of.
And if the attorney general is appointed by Tony Evers, you can be kind of a beholden to Tony Evers. Now, Josh Call, he's a wimp, so he's beholden to Tony Evers anyway. But I think in our system, it is good to have independently elected officers like this, because whether we have a Republican governor or a Democrat governor, if they're infringing on the constitutionally protected rights of the citizens of Wisconsin, and I was attorney general, I'd get involved. And I've shown a willingness to stand up to my party. I voted against Foxconn. I voted against one of Governor Walker's budgets because I thought it spent too much money. And I think we need to have people like that who are willing. Yeah, I agree with Republicans on, like most things. That's why I'm a Republican. But there are times when I think Republicans stray from what I consider the sort of small government, pro-liberty agenda. And if the attorney general can get involved to protect those issues on behalf of the people, I think that's a great thing.
So let's get to one more question here. Then I want to ask you about Eric Tony, and this is from Ben. He is our resident proponent for legalization of marijuana. I know you stand for medical, economic, and personal freedom. So if you became AG, would you work to legalize cannabis and move Wisconsin towards the future?
Already done, Ben. When I was in the legislature, I was the lonely Republican that authored a bill with a couple of Democrats to decriminalize small amounts of marijuana. I've very publicly said, I think on your show, probably a number of times, that I believe Republicans have made a mistake on the marijuana issue and you're getting left behind. Now, I'm not in the legislature as the attorney general, so only the legislature can change that law. And so long as it's a law, and that just kind of is the way that it is.
Right.
But certainly my views are not a secret to anybody on the direction we ought to be going on that issue.
Yeah. So Eric Tony, he is the district attorney, has been for 9 years, or he's in his 9th year right now in Fond du Lac County. You have referenced him as this is another one of those things where, I'm a Republican, which this is weird. Like, you're a Republican. Aren't you just supposed to get behind? I mean, we have one Republican candidate right now that's running for attorney general. Why don't you just get behind him? So that's one of those questions. And then if not, of course, why?
I'm not a very good rule follower, Ben.
No,
I
you're
never
not.
really have
No.
been. So I'm not really like hey, we should just fall in line kind of guy. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what's really brought this to light for me is Brian Hagedorn. You will remember Brian Hagedorn is on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. I remember his campaign for Wisconsin Supreme Court vividly. He ran around to every single Republican group that there was, told us all what a conservative he was. He was Governor Walker's attorney and blah, blah, blah. And look at what he has done on the court. It has been an absolute disaster from start to finish. And the problem, what bothers me is there were red flags. Like, I knew deep down inside that there's not something right here. He's faking this. I couldn't put my finger on it at the time. I didn't have a specific issue, but I have been wary of just listening to what you have to say. I want to see what you actually do. And so Eric Toney prosecuted people for violating the stay-at-home order. One of the only district attorneys in the state to do that. He literally prosecuted people for swimming in a pool, a private pool at a VRBO.
At a what? At a what?
An Airbnb, VRBO,
okay.
one of those kind of things where you rent your house out.
Weird. Okay.
But because remember, the stay-at-home order said no swimming in pools, right?
Oh, yeah, it did, didn't it?
The absurdity of the stay-at-home order.
Right.
So as a district attorney, Eric Toney goes to work every day and does his job. And he prosecutes people and he does what he's supposed to do. And the people of Fond du Lac County must like him because he's been reelected a time or two. And so he's probably a competent district attorney for prosecuting the crimes there, although there is a little issue that I'll talk about on that score. But so he's had kind of one, what I would call defining moment where we can get a glimpse into the man's soul. And he failed. It was an epic fail. I'm, a private practice attorney, some guy in the middle of nowhere, and I'm writing briefs for free for a group of sportsmen to be filed in the Supreme Court case that ultimately overturned the stay-at-home order. That's how I'm using my law degree. He's using his to prosecute people for swimming in pools. And I just can't get behind that kind of guy because I think, you might say, well, that's just one time. He's a decent guy, blah, blah, blah. But that's the one time, that's the only thing we know about him. So he has a 100% failure rate. And if you have a 100% failure rate, I don't think I can support you.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, it was 14. Now, was that during the safer at home or stay at home? I can't remember what it was called. One of those two. Or was this anything to do with, were they individuals? Were they businesses? Was this the 25% indoor capacity limit? Or was it under just one?
It was the stay-at-home order, and there were 10 prosecutions. Some of them were related to a small business. People in a restaurant eating a hamburger or whatever in the restaurant, and find the person eating the food, find the person, or prosecuted the person eating the food, prosecuted the person that owned the restaurant, prosecuted one of the other people that worked at the restaurant. And so it wasn't just like, one of my ADAs made a mistake. There's 10 of them. And Tony's defense to this is, well, I had to follow the law. Well, no, it wasn't a law.
It wasn't a law, was it?
And you're right. And he originally said, well, the legislature signed it, so I had to, it's a law. I have to follow the law.
Well, okay.
The legislature didn't sign it. This was an order from an unelected bureaucrat that nearly all of us in the state said, well, that's an illegal order. She can't do that. And nearly every other prosecutor in the state said, I'm not sure about this, and didn't prosecute it. Brent Walk, you will remember, basically told Tony Evers to take his order and shove it where the sun don't shine.
Yeah, I remember that.
And here we have a Republican district attorney prosecuting people, and he'll say, well, geez, I only filed the charges. I didn't actually follow through with the prosecutions. I dropped them after the Supreme Court ruled that the order was illegal. Well, yeah, you had to. It was an illegal order. You had no choice. So are you telling me, District Attorney Toney, that had the Supreme Court not made that ruling, that you would have prosecuted somebody, you would have followed through and giving them jail time for swimming in a pool? I'm out, man. There's no way that I'm supporting somebody that did that.
Yeah. So is that the obviously this is a kind of that defining moment, and whether that's fair or not, right? I'm sure he's like you said, has a great career in his 8-9 years in office, gets elected. I don't know what his case numbers are. I don't know all that stuff. I haven't looked into that at all. But there are moments, and I think that's just kind of true in life. And whether that's fair or not, it is what it is. You can do all the right things 98% of the time, but boy, that 2% you don't. That's actually what those are big things. Like you can screw up little ones or do great little ones, but there's some moments in our lives, whether it's marriages and husbands and wives or parenting. You can be the greatest parent, but boy, that one time you yelled at kids and they never forget it. Right. It's unfortunate that maybe that one thing is the defining moment. At the same time, that is a defining moment. Is that the only thing that you look at Eric Toney? And I'm not trying to get you to say more bad things or not bad things, but, criticize them even more. But is that like, okay, no kidding. I saw that and I'm like, dude, no kidding. I'm so glad we got Ryan Owens running. Oh, now he's out. That's it. I gotta put my name in.
Yeah, well, he's running like you would expect him to run, right? You always run on your strengths, and his strength is he's been an elected DA for 9 years. Mm-hmm. Well, he also has overseen as the top law enforcement official in Fond du Lac County a huge spike in violent crime in Fond du Lac. It went up something like 50% in 2020, and so part of his campaign is, hey, we have to get crime under control, which we do. We've got a serious issue, particularly in Milwaukee and with the rioting and whatever happened after the defund the police and all of this nonsense that we've seen. So he's kind of running on that record, but the record is not good. And so I'm concerned that if he's our nominee, not only do I not really want him to be our nominee, but if he is, I think Josh Kaul might beat him like a drum. And I don't want to keep having Josh Kaul as our attorney general.
Well, I was literally writing that down right now. Which is the worst case scenario? Eric Toney, AG, or Josh Kaul, AG? Not who do you think is going to win. What's the worst case there? Like, which one would you actually? Boy, if that was it, which one would you take?
I'd have to write in Ben Dryden, I think, for attorney general. I don't know.
Yeah, don't do that. Like nobody.
Look. Josh Kaul's terrible, and he's as bad as it gets. And of course, he was for the stay-at-home, so he's got 10 things that are bad about him, and that we know. Like he's got 10 out of 10 is bad. I know Tony's got 1 out of 1 that's bad, but I suspect on a range of other issues, Tony would be okay. Sure. So I'd support him over Josh Kaul, but I hope it doesn't come to that. I think we can do far better.
And hopefully that, what was his name? Jake Curtis, maybe getting an announcement, or he may be saying something the next day or two. And then, you'll be out of the race and you can go hunting and everything's wonderful.
Yeah, was it you? I told somebody that I just want to go back to hunt, deer hunting and drinking whiskey. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
You can do that as Attorney General. Can't you? I don't know how that's going to work.
It's hard to deer hunt in Madison. They don't have great hunting.
We had a follow-up here from Ben. How constitutional is criminalizing humans for using natural... Blah, blah, blah. If you become AG, I hope you'll choose to influence your fellow Republicans in the legislature. Oh, okay. I guess that wasn't a question. Sorry. Or maybe it was. National No, whatever. Yeah, so what else is do you want to talk about?
I think that brings up an interesting point that people don't think about on this kind of race is how often the Attorney General is actually working with the legislature. And I was surprised how often Brad Schimmel was working with the legislature when he was Attorney General. Because what happens in that position is a lot of, I think, the issues that you might see, the quirks in the law that DAs might see or that they'd see in the crime lab, that your special prosecutors might see, that your assistant attorneys general might see, they kind of filter up to the attorney general, and then that person goes to the legislature and says, hey, this particular law is not working very well. Here's my ideas on how to fix it. Well, I know most of those people. And I've worked with most of those people, and I got a lot of bills passed when I worked in the legislature. So I have I think a pretty good understanding of what it would take to work with the legislature to get things changed as they came up. So, for example, just yesterday, you've heard probably over the years that there's this backlog of sexual assault kits at the Department of Justice, and testing those kits and getting them through the system. And there's a bill that's put out by one of my former colleagues, David Steffen, to bring some accountability to that. And I actually was working with Rep. Steffen's office just yesterday saying, maybe we should have some metrics related to exactly how that works with DOJ. Because, as a small business owner or small businessman, what's important to me is accountability, right? I don't micromanage you, but here's the direction to go, and here's our goal. And we're going to have some metrics and accountability to that. And I'm not sure why we don't do that in government very well, but I think that we could bring some metrics to, okay, if the DOJ has this, they have X number of days to get this done. And if they don't get this done in X number of days, we're going to have some consequences. And I think that's important in government, that we don't just allow it to be, well, we didn't quite get to it this week. Oh, well, no, that's not,
Whatever.
oh, well, in the private sector means you go out of business, right?
Yep.
Oh, well, in the public sector oftentimes means, well, I just got a paycheck and we didn't quite get our work done. And that's not acceptable to me.
Speaking of Brad Schimmel, when he was in office, I know my dad, former sheriff, he had a lot of respect for Brad Schimmel. Everyone that I know, and some of them are Republicans, like sheriffs, actually a lot of them are probably Republicans, but even like I think Fitzy, Democrat sheriff, and I think Tracy Finch in Burnett, Independent. I've asked them about Brad Schimmel, and they all had a lot of respect for him. Now, I don't know. I don't think this is like a Republican thing. It was just from their line of work. They've never had an issue, and it's always good. Talk to people in DA's office, district attorneys, ADAs. My wife works in the district attorney's office, and she said, yeah, Brad Schimmel, he was good. Again, there's no politics behind it. It was good. I've asked all those same people, with the exception of my wife on this one. But I asked everyone else since then about Josh Call, since he's been in, and it's not really glowing reviews, man.
Right.
And I don't know why. And these are not, it's not a political bias here. Or maybe it is, but that's weird because some of them aren't even Republicans. It's just not really glowing reviews at all. Like, I've yet to find one person that I talk to in our area that in their line of work, in their field, either in law enforcement or in the court system, that gives them praise. Why is that?
Well, I'm sure most of it goes back to the Kenosha and Madison riots last summer, that he essentially stood with the rioters. And when you're in law enforcement, if you're a Republican or Democrat, what you need right now, I think more than anything, is support from the people in elected office. There are so many members of law enforcement, I think, they're just demoralized by what's going on out there. They feel attacked. They feel under threat. And you have to have somebody in the AG's office who will stand shoulder to shoulder with them, who will have their back, who they don't have to worry about, prosecuting them for some politically motivated stuff because it was unpopular in this community or that community. They need to know that the AG has their back. And I get the impression they don't feel that way about Josh Paul, and rightfully so. I don't think he does have their back.
Yeah. We have a question here from Peter Johnson. Adam, when you become AG, what will you do to investigate the abuses going on in Burnett County zoning? And I have no idea what this stuff is, what he's talking about. Do you? And I don't know if you can speak to it. By the fact that you're laughing right now, maybe we shouldn't talk about it. I have no idea what this is about.
Well, I've had a rough relationship with the Burnett County zoning office. I think they are. Yeah. You might remember the Whitetail Campground.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
It's not funny, actually. It's really sad, and I'm really disappointed in what goes on in Burnett County, particularly with their zoning office. I would bring to bear every single tool that I would have, not only with federal government, state government, but local governments as well, to protect people's rights. And property rights are a fundamental right. We have state laws in this state that protect people's rights to use and develop their property in a reasonable way. And to the extent that we have local governments interfering with that, I think it's unacceptable. And I would do everything in my power as Attorney General to stand with the people against that kind of behavior.
This is a little off topic, but I want to ask, so wolf hunting. You've tried to explain this to me before. I don't understand why this is even a thing. I mean, I guess, we want to go and kill some wolves to keep the population down, et cetera. But so I understand why the reason for doing it and the people who don't want to do it for some reason. But why is this such a big political thing?
Well, two reasons. One, you have one side, my side, frankly, that believes that this is a
my
predator.
side's right and you're wrong. Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's true. Yeah, I try to tell my wife that. She never really agrees.
Barb.
So that believes, and I think correctly, that it's like any other predator. It's like any other animal. You have to manage it, right? We manage our deer herd, and we should be managing our wolf population. That was always the idea when we have the wolf reintroduction 20 or 30 years ago, that we were going to manage it to some level. We were going to have a wolf management plan, and that's been screwed up over the years by, frankly, judges in DC that have kept putting it on hold and saying, nope, it's protected. And so now we're way above what the management plan ever was. They kill dogs, they kill cattle, they inflict a massive amount of harm, particularly in the northern part of the state. And I don't think there's anyone, most that believes that we should be back to zero. I mean, it wouldn't hurt my feelings to be back to zero, to be honest with you, but everybody really believes on my side that we ought to manage to that goal of about 350. And so we get to that level, we finally have a hunt, and what happens is the DNR puts out what the management goal or what the kill goal ought to be to reduce the population, issue the tags. The tribes under the treaties are able to take half the tags, and they don't use them because the tribes feel that the wolf ought to be protected, that it's a brother. And so they don't use the tags. So the DNR says, okay, 300 is our quota this year. So now effectively it's 150. And there was this whole big hullabaloo last year because what happens is you're reporting and you have to report within 24 hours if you've had a kill. And as that happens, when you get close to that 150, DNR closes the season.
Oh, sure.
So you don't go over your goal. Well, last year it went over the goal by 10 or 15 or 20 or something like that. But it didn't actually go over the full quota because the tribes don't use theirs. It was far below the full quota. Oh, well, the New York Times doesn't report that, of course. So then you get the animal rights groups that are suing, and you have the DNR that's a rogue agency at the moment telling the Natural Resources Board, we don't care what you think the quota ought to be. We're going to do this. Natural Resources Board is in control of DNR, and DNR is just being totally lawless and rogue on this. And when we have a Madison liberal judge that says, no, we're going to shut down the season. So it's a whole disaster. And we have Josh Call, who just kind of, prances around and doesn't actually, do the hard work of appealing the case in a timely manner so we can have the season. And it's just one of those issues where, again, a strong, determined attorney general could have a huge influence on this issue.
How would they in this scenario?
So DOJ is required to represent the agency, right? And so the agency had put out, we're going to have a season, and there was a lawsuit, and Josh Call did a terrible job in the lawsuit. Court enters in an injunction. As far as I know, we still don't have an appeal. That was done last week. If I was AG, we would have been there all night working on an emergency appeal to that order by that court to get it overturned so that we could still have our November season. I doubt now that we'll have a November season because they're, taking their sweet time filing the appeal.
And just real quickly, again, I didn't really want to spend a ton of time on this, but I'm still, because we put something up yesterday. DNR had an update about something. I don't know. It was a pretty much non-press. There's nothing in it, right?
Right.
But it was just another thing. It seems like I'm doing a lot of these lately, posting a lot of news releases or politicians and their opinion. I don't really get that. So what is the outcome? So if there isn't going to be one this year, what are the negative or potential negative outcomes from this going forward, assuming that there is one next year? We'll just assume that in this scenario, and that there isn't one this year. So between those two, over the next year, we just see a whole bunch, like a ton more wolves, or it shouldn't be that big a deal, right?
No, it's a big deal because first of all, we're way above our quota. We're somewhere in the 1,000 range, and we should be at about 350.
Oh.
So we're about 300% of where we ought to be. And now they're gonna breed again, and we're gonna have more wolves next year. And so, instead of going in the right direction, which is closer to 350, we continue going in the wrong direction.
Okay, got it. Lastly, we have a question here. When you're elected, how about a deep dive on any codes of ethics for state and county elected officials? Any reply to that?
How about a deep dive? I like it. We should have, look, public service ought to be just that. It ought to be a public service. And if you're using the position to enrich yourself, you should go to jail.
I love it. Yes. You have phone calls. Hey, politically speaking, hey, are we still doing those? Because we do those the third Thursday, Patty, you, and I. So we don't have another one, and for another 3 weeks from today, I think. Are we still planning on those, or are we just gonna?
Yeah. No, I'm an optimistic guy. I feel like Jake's gonna get in, and I'm gonna have the shortest AG campaign in the history of the world, and we're gonna go back to talking to Patty.
That's awesome. I love talking to Patty. And I like it when you guys talk to each other. That's just fantastic. That makes for a good show. Adam, thank you so very much. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on or bring up or discuss before we wrap it up?
No, I'm good, man. Thanks for the time.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. Good luck with everything. Need anything, let us know. Happy to. How about this? So since you didn't send a press release out, say, officially announcing Are you going to send one saying that you're not running? Here's
Maybe,
the press
I don't
release.
know.
I'm not running. It's like, oh, didn't know you were.
Maybe that's what it'll say. I'm not running.
No, I'm not. Please send that press release. I will literally publish that on DrydenWire.com. And Adam Jarchow calling, not running. And then press release from Adam Jarchow. I'm not running.
Perfect.
And that's it.
I liked it.
All right, cool. Thanks so much. Special thank you to my guest today, Adam Jarchow, for coming on for a chat, and thank you for watching. Thank you for all the questions. I'll see you next Tuesday when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be back for our next weekly Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show. Until then, have a great rest of your week, and as always, have a blessed day.